It's been 18 months since I have last been in my dad's flat, and I'm so pleased that he's let me back in to help him get on top of things. Now, 18 months ago, when I was last in his flat, he was actually in hospital, having very nearly lost his life to heart failure. And I will never forget being in the hospital with my brother, having the surgeon come in to talk to us and warn us that we shouldn't expect my dad to make it out of theatre. But he did. He's a walking miracle. He lives his life and has done for a long time, actually, with a serious heart problem. And he also has diabetes and a variety of other health issues. But it's safe to say that it's not my dad's health issues that have got him into the position that he is in, but they definitely do massively impact his ability to get himself out of the position that he is in. My dad would describe himself as a magpie and repeatedly did during the day when we were working on his kitchen. In fact, he likes things. My dad has several hobbies that he's very passionate about. He describes his flat as a shed with a bed, and I think that is very accurate. Some of his hobbies include flying model helicopters and planes. That is a hobby that I can remember him having since I was a very young child. And you will see in a minute when we pan up, there is one of his model helicopters sitting on top of the wardrobe here. Or is that a drone? I don't know. Also, he loves astronomy. I actually had to Google the difference between astronomy and astrology before doing this voiceover, as I realized I couldn't remember which one was which. But astronomy, he has a lot of telescopes. He loves astronomy. He has model trains, which is a fairly recent hobby of his in the last few years that he's taken up. And he also has a 3D printer. Actually, 18 months ago, he had three 3D printers. So since I've last been in the flat, he has made a good effort at minimizing his hobbies. So he's gotten rid of, I think, almost all, if not all, of his model helicopters and planes, subject to that being a drone on top of his wardrobe, I'm not sure. And he's also minimized his 3D printers. So he has just one 3D printer now, which he uses to print things in connection with his other hobbies. The trains and the astronomy is where he's concentrating his time. But even then, he admitted to me he's definitely sure he could get rid of some of the telescopes that are heavier and that he finds it very difficult to lift now with his increasingly worse heart condition. So he has made an effort to minimize things, and the condition of the flat now compared to where it was 18 months ago, I would say it is not in as bad a condition as it was when I was last there 18 months ago. So I'm spending a day in the flat today, and I'm heading back next weekend to do some more. I think it will take me 3 or 4 visits to kind of get on top of the bulk of things, and then I'd like to kind of help him keep chipping away. So my mission for today is to get on top of the kitchen where you can see me now. And ideally, I would have liked to have tackled the toilet and just give that a really good clean. But I ran out of time to do that. So kitchen it is. Kitchen is where we spent the time. I spent a total of, I think it was just over 7 hours on the kitchen. Now, if you have a space like my dad's, with a lot of stuff, so a small area or maybe a big area, but with a lot of stuff, then rather than concentrating your efforts on the cleaning tasks, first up, concentrate your efforts on decluttering. So our mission to start with this kitchen was to create as much space to work within as possible. My dad had 8 crates, like the one you see me filling up here, 8 crates sitting on the edge of his kitchen, and they have been there for a very long time. And he admitted that he hadn't actually accessed the lower crates for years, didn't know what was in them, so felt reasonably confident that most things in them could go. However, we also knew that there would be some kind of memorabilia, some sentimental stuff, photographs, that sort of thing in those crates. So we needed to go through all of them. Now, 18 months ago, when I was last in the flat, I also concentrated my efforts at that time on the kitchen and the toilet. I had 2 days then before he was released from hospital to get the place basically habitable for him to come back and get better. The difference now, and the real positive compared to where we were 18 months ago, as well as my dad being a lot better, of course, is that he is here with me, helping me make decisions about what we can declutter from the house. Whereas previously, when I was in the house 18 months ago, I had to basically, I couldn't get rid of anything that I thought he might need. So I couldn't go through these crates at all because I didn't even know what was in them. When it came to the tech, and he has a lot of tech, he has a lot of tools, a lot of things to do with his hobbies, I didn't know what half of it was, over half of it was. So I had to concentrate my efforts when it came to decluttering on out of date food, of which there was plenty 18 months ago, and actual like rubbish, a few kind of kitchen items that I knew like I could see he had several of, so I could get rid of like the worst of the bunch and keep the best of the bunch. But otherwise, I was restricted in terms of what I could declutter. So it was really great today. My dad was definitely in a good mental headspace in terms of minimizing things in the flat. So he was prepared to let things go. He really wants to get back on top of things. My dad knows that obviously he knows I've filmed this. He knows that I filmed it for YouTube, that I'll be putting it up on YouTube. And actually hadn't told my dad about my YouTube channel. I don't tell many people about my YouTube channel, but I told him about my YouTube channel. And one of the reasons why he agreed to me coming in now to helping him out, he's a very proud man. And I think, and clearly he'd been embarrassed about the state that it was in, hadn't wanted help from me. And my sister had also offered repeatedly to come in and help him out. And he'd always said no, he could manage by himself. But he explained to me that he liked the idea that in sharing his story, hopefully it would help other people to get on top of their spaces bit by bit and also to accept help when it is offered. I think my dad really just couldn't understand why I would give up the time to help him, but he is my dad. We are family. I love him. And of course, I want to help him and I want to help him to live the best life that he can. And I know that if we give him a more peaceful space, he will actually be able to enjoy his retirement and enjoy his hobbies way more. For my dad, his priorities definitely lie in his hobbies rather than cleaning and tidying up around the house. But I think he can see now that if he spends a bit of time doing both, then he will actually get way more enjoyment out of his hobbies. Just by being in that calmer space, being able to move around more, find the things he needs. Here we'd found a big bag of old photographs, and it was really lovely to look at a few of them with my dad and get them also in a bag together safely in his bedroom, where we can keep them, keep them nice, keep them safe, know where they are. And I'm really looking forward to coming back another day and going through all of those pictures and hearing the stories that go along with them. I absolutely love going through old photos, particularly, where you might be in a few. Like there were a couple of pictures that I saw of me when I was really young, which were super cute. And I'd like to go back through and look at the older ones of my dad when he was in his army days. I saw a couple of those. My dad actually entered the army when he was 14 years old. Back then you could enter the army quite young, and basically you entered army school. So you went and you lived an army school. You finished your education at the army school, and then you went into the army proper and your proper kind of army training. He and two of his brothers and one of his sisters, he's from, reasonably big family. There were five of them, two sisters and three brothers, and four of them went into the army. And that's what so many people did. Back then, where he lived, on the outskirts of Manchester, was an area where, there wasn't a lot of money and there wasn't a lot of opportunity. And for so many, the best opportunity they had at a decent education that might lead them on to bigger and better things was to join the army. And that was certainly the case for my dad. He received a great education there, and became an electrical engineer and went on to work in computing and worked his way up to being pretty successful. But he has struggled certainly in the last couple of decades. And he has been in this flat now, I'm trying to work it out, I think it is about 15 years. The flat has been in our family for a little bit longer than that, maybe about 20 plus years. And my brother lived in it. My brother rented it initially before my dad moved in. When my brother first moved in, I did a lot of work back then to try to kind of get on top of the place a little bit. And I would go in and help my brother occasionally when it came to cleaning. I painted this kitchen. I painted all of the cupboards. The tiles that I painted blue had, I think, some kind of design. I can't even remember what the design was that we didn't like. So I bought some tile paint. We painted the tiles blue, and it was very much a kind of this will do for now job. Got a new oven, got a new hob in there. And the anticipation, I guess, was always that eventually we would get a new kitchen, but that never happened. And I mentioned this to my dad when I was there helping him out, but he is not interested in doing any kind of major work in the place. And budget, means I think that would be tricky as well. So I would quite like to go back in though and repaint the cupboards. And I think actually the best thing to do would be to strip the paint off of the tiles and get some kind of tile stickers or some kind of vinyl that we can put over there. I'm sure that there is something that we could do. Get a new worktop in there, a new sink. So those will be my longer term plans, but we can't do anything with the amount of stuff that was in there. So the first job of creating some floor space has been achieved. And now the next job is to go around the cupboards, clearing them out kind of bit by bit so that we can get some of the stuff that's on the work surfaces into the cupboards. So that's the next thing that I'm doing. And I'm going to tackle this kind of ish shelf by shelf. But much like my dad, I get easily distracted. So let's see if I can stay on track. This cupboard has a kind of day-to-day crockery in it. It also has medication in it. And having seen what we have kind of out on the work surfaces, in the crates, what I want to do is have a shelf that has the crockery and the glasses and cups that my dad is using regularly, and then have a shelf which is dedicated to medication, as my dad has quite a few medical issues that he needs a lot of medication for. It'd be nice to have them organized, whereas at the moment I found like several bags in the kitchen with medicine in and a lot of duplicate medicines, and I don't think he really appreciates how much he has. He is organizing his medicines each week. He has like a weekly medication organizer so he can put his tablets in for like each day of the week and each time that he's taking them. So I feel like he's being, well organized. He's taking his medication and that's all great, but it's just getting it like where he can see it, where he knows what he needs to reorder like week upon week and what he might not need so much of. And then at the top, we want to have stuff that he's not using as regularly. So maybe like wound dressings, hopefully he won't be needing very regularly, and the kind of medicines that you might need now and again, but not certainly daily, and other things that he doesn't need so much. My dad is not the tallest man. He does have a step in the kitchen, which is great, but he wouldn't be able to easily access the top shelf. And in fact, nor would I. And I'm not a short person. I'm 5'7" and I needed a step in order to get up to that top shelf. So anything we have on the top shelf has to be stuff that we do not need regularly. So now I have cleared out that cupboard. I want to wipe it down because it was quite grubby, but I did not want to wipe it down from a sink, which was not clean. So that's something that we need to do next. There is quite a lot of food stuff up by this sink, a lot of stuff, right? So I want to get the clean pots, which are on the drainer, packed away, clear some of the food stuff, and then the next job is to tackle the sink. So clean the sink and then we can fill it up with some hot soapy water, which we will use to wipe down the cupboard. So I had a bit of a plan when I went into this particular job, but I think it's like helpful just as you start to work your way around a room to be constantly formulating the next step. So I was just checking with my dad there that this kind of the sink is actually quite different from like my sink, where I have, I guess, what is called a sink and a half. I have the main sink, then I have a middle sink, which I use to drain things. It's like a kind of drainer-ish in the middle, but it's very different to what I've seen. So I just wanted to check that it really can cope with water going down it and I wasn't going to flood anything. So I bought these sponges just from a local kind of cheapo shop, pound shop, and they were rubbish. They were really tiny. So I had to crack out the big guys. And I had thankfully bought a few scrub daddies, which I think are really good for getting like stuck on grime off. And I'm just using a kitchen cleaner that I found in my dad's sink. I took a lot of supplies with me. Everything I could think that I would need, I took with me. I also had some cleaning supplies that I'd left 18 months ago in sort of under the kitchen sink. So I had a few things I could use there. But really, what we need when it comes to the kitchen sink is a good degreaser. And actually, to start with, a dish soap works well. So we have Fairy washing up liquid. I think if you're in America, it's called Dawn washing up liquid. Anything like that to start with to get like that initial layer of grime off is a great degreaser. And I'm just using a kitchen degreaser that my dad had. That worked really well. We have an issue of limescale throughout the house. We are in a hard water area. So I bought a scraper along with me because I remember this being an issue when I was working in the house 18 months ago. So there's a lot of limescale in this sink. There's also a limescale in the toilet bowl. At the very start of this video, you may have seen me unwrapping a couple of, they look kind of like dishwasher tablets. They're actually Harpic limescale tablets. I have heard these are good. I've never used them before, but I unwrapped 3 of them and I put them in the toilet bowl and forbade my dad from using the toilet for as long as possible. So we got to let that sit for like 2 to 3 hours before it was used, and then we stuck another one in. And I'm hoping that they will have helped to shift some of that limescale before I come back next weekend to give the toilet a very good scrub. So when it comes to limescale in this sink, I did my best 18 months ago at tackling some of it, but this time I came armed with a scraper. So this is a scraper with a plastic head. You can get them with like a metal heads on them for use in ovens, but this is like a plastic acrylic sink, and I do not want to be using metal on it and scratching it. So I'm using the I say I don't want to be using metal. I'm using like wire wool here, but I don't want to use a metal scraper. So plastic scraper worked really well. But then for the kind of middle area of limescale, I used the wire wool. I definitely could have got more off if I'd spent more time. But we have an awful lot to tackle in this kitchen, and I have to be realistic about the time that I can dedicate to each task. There is no point having a pristine, limescale free, gleaming kitchen sink, but then everywhere else is still cluttered and unclean. So I need to make sure I'm doing the best of everything in the time that I have, and I'm limited to just this one day when it comes to this task. So having got the kind of top layer of grime away, having got the majority of the limescale away, I coated everything in bleach to make sure we were killing all of the bacteria, including the sink bowl as well. We gave that all a very good cover of bleach. And then I left that to soak for a while I cleared some more of the clutter on the surfaces, so that I could come back, rinse all of that down, and then we were good to start putting the hot soapy water in the bowl to start wiping down the cupboard tops. So at this point, I'm feeling like I can really start to see some progress here in the kitchen. It's all coming together. My dad is so grateful for my help, and I don't need him to be grateful. Of course, I would do this. And also, I must say, and I did say to my dad repeatedly, I do genuinely enjoy this. I've always enjoyed cleaning, but I also really enjoy like transforming a space for somebody else. Before I had kids, when I was younger and I had a bit more time, I would help out my friends and family members having children. I think I'd always found like the idea of like looking after a small person absolutely mind-boggling. And I've always loved kids, but I would say I am not naturally like earth mom. I wouldn't like just go ahead, pick up somebody else's child and know what to do with them. But I absolutely knew my way around a house. And I knew that when people were struggling in those like early stages of children and toddlers and life was getting on top of them, I knew if I came in and like gave their kitchen or their bathroom a really good scrub, it would make an improvement to their lives. And that's what I like to do. So I've got some really great memories of going in, like helping out friends, like going in to see the babies and then staying for a few hours to help friends get on top of things around the house. And I've always loved it. I've always loved helping somebody get on top of a situation which has felt overwhelming for them. And I love seeing a project come together. And I think like the trickier, the dirtier, the more cluttered the situation is, the more rewarding the outcome is. So once I start to see like little areas come together, I get a real kick out of it. So as hard as it was and as physically demanding as it was, I really enjoyed this day. And the whole time, no, nearly the whole time, my dad and I are chatting about various things, catching up, talking about memories, things from his childhood, stuff from my childhood, all nice stuff, all like, it was really nice to actually chat. And because I do feel like very calm and happy and relaxed when I am cleaning, I feel like it's almost easier to have those kind of conversations and catch up. Like everyone's feeling, you know, or I guess I was feeling relaxed. I don't know exactly how my dad was feeling. I think we got about 4 or 5 hours in, and my dad probably wanted me to go home and give him some space back because he's not used to spending this long with somebody in his flat. Now, one of the things with the sink I find is like you have to clean the sink in order to start cleaning areas of the kitchen. But then the sink gets really grubby again with each like task you do. So you're basically constantly re-cleaning the sink. So I think that's something with a big task like this, you just have to get your head around the fact that you're going to clean the sink a few times during the process. Now, I apologize for this angle. I completely didn't check this, of course, and we had a lot to do. So I was just quickly moving the camera around. And yeah, it was when I came to actually edit this, I realized that I basically just done a close up video of my bum. So the majority of that I cut out, you'll be grateful for, but there was an awful lot more of that and worse angles of me in that cupboard. So having tackled that cupboard, we moved on to the next one. And this is more of the day-to-day food. I feel like this cupboard is the one that my dad is reaching into a lot more. And my dad is definitely, and my mum as well, they're definitely of an era of like scarcity purchasing and always worried about what might happen next. They've, been born of parents who have lived through, the end of Second World War. They have been raised in their younger years at the end of, rationing. And I've seen that with both of my parents. If ever there is a story in the news of bad weather happening or unrest in the country or wider across the wider world, they will stock purchase items and particularly food. And when I was going through my dad's cupboards, I was saying to him, you have an awful lot of tins of soup, you have an awful lot of pasta and pasta sauces and these kind of stock items. He said, but if we get really bad weather and we get snowed in, I've got to know that I have enough food, or if something bad happens, I want to make sure that I don't have to leave the house. And I politely pointed out, I think my dad has enough food to feed himself without worrying for a good couple of months, subject to needing, some fruit and veg and some protein to add to those meals. But I totally do get it. I mean, as to the extent that I can, having grown up with parents who are, like to have a stock of food. And it is helpful, and we do need it to some degree. I do also have some food stock to some degree, and if we were to get snowed in, I like to think that we would happily be able to feed ourselves for a good couple of weeks with the provisions that we have. But I don't think that we need to stock more than that. And if you have a small kitchen like my dad does, you have to be realistic about what you can store away and the space that you have to do that. And we need to make sure that our cupboards have the stuff that we're using on a day-to-day basis, that we don't have stock cupboards, and then all of the food that we are using on a day-to-day basis on work surfaces, which is the position that my dad was in. Now, you may recall seeing earlier that there was a unit standing just in front of this space. Now, if you look to the right-hand side, there is a low coffee table with blue and white tiles on it. That table was actually sitting in this space, preventing my dad from pushing the unit back into this space that belonged there. So we bought a unit originally when the flat was purchased, that fit in this space perfectly. But my dad also had this coffee table. It was made by a very good family friend, so it had a lot of memories to it. It also been made, with many hours spent, a lot of love poured into it. So understandingly, that my dad didn't want to part with the table, but then wasn't using it, didn't have any space for it. And we ended up in a position where we had the coffee table basically getting in the way of the kitchen. So my dad had, I didn't have to ask him about this at all. He said to me, the coffee table really needs to go to somebody that can actually use it, because it was wasted there. It was just sitting there, not being used and getting in the way. So that was great that he'd already made that decision. I moved it out of the way and then cleaned up under the cupboard, got rid of all the grime under there, all of the cobwebs. Now for this unit, ideally, I'd have loved to strip everything off it and give the whole thing a really good clean. I did do that 18 months ago, but for now, we just have to settle for a bit of a surface clean, getting all the grubby kind of fingerprints off, and then pushing it back into position. So we've got a bit of grime on the front here, which we can get rid of, but no time today to empty everything out. This is where my dad has his cutlery and the tools that he needs for cooking day to day. So look at this teaspoon. It was brown. My dad said that is his tea bag teaspoon, and he does clean it occasionally. Well, I cleaned it for him and it came up really well just using some hot soapy water. So now we can get back to this cupboard, clearing out the cans and stuff. And I would say most of the stuff in that cupboard was pretty good. I'm now working on the left-hand cupboard. I'm going to move across what I can, filling in the spaces that I've created. And I'm checking the date on everything, basically. And generally, the stuff at the front was in date. And as we get further back, we've got items that my dad has forgotten about, items that he's purchased, thinking he might try. There was a pad thai mix in there. I said, are you going to make this pad thai mix? Because it was a little bit out of date, but not massively. And I think when it comes to longer term food items and tinned items, if they're a month or two out of date, then generally speaking, like I would use something that was tinned if it was a month or two out of date. So anything kind of up to 3 months out of date, I gave my dad the option of choosing to keep it if he felt like he could use it very quickly. So within the next week or two, I really wanted him to be using up those items. Like when it came to the pad thai mix, and I said, are you going to use this? Like it's a month out of date. He's like, what is pad thai? How do I cook it? What do I do with it? And if you have to make those decisions and you don't know what something is for, we made the decision to part with that particular item. So there was plenty of stuff that we let go of. I think some lessons learned from my dad there in terms of how much stock to keep. And I encouraged him to use up some of the items in his cupboard before buying any more, and pointed out that could be, quite helpful in January where people are recovering from Christmas spending. He could spend the next couple of weeks using up a lot of the stuff that's in his cupboards and just buying, the fresh fruit, veg, protein to go with his meals. At the top of this cupboard, my dad has a lot of Tupperware, and most of it is brand new, still in its cellophane. I took a couple of bits out just to check what was behind there. But being satisfied that it was new Tupperware, I asked him if he was absolutely sure he needed it all. He did feel like he did need it. So that was stuff that he'd purchased quite purposefully, fairly recently. So we left that in there, and now I'm putting things back in, all the stuff that is in date, trying to put things which have a bit less kind of life on them, need using up quickly, at the front of the cupboard so that they are easier to hand, and putting stuff which like unopened packets of pasta, stuff that's still got quite a lot of date left, into that corner kind of bit there. And ideally we'd have some pull-out shelving there, but that's just not possible to add to these particular cupboards. And really that would need to be part of like a full kitchen renovation, which, as I said, isn't on my dad's radar right now, but I still think there is plenty we can do to improve this kitchen in the meantime. My mission with this cupboard was to make sure that we had some space in it that we could put some of the other food items that were on the work surfaces into the cupboard. So, in an ideal world, I want to get to the position where we have all food stuff packed away. And then we have out, on the kitchen counters, the stuff we really need to have out, like the air fryer, like the kettle, maybe a couple of chopping boards, a skillet, but we have some counters free. So there was a little bit of counter space free. My dad is still doing some cooking. He had, in fact, made a vegetable soup, he was telling me when I arrived. It smelt really yummy. He'd made veggie soup, was offering me a bowl. But I just had my lunch and I was desperate to get stuck into the task at hand. So it's good that he is cooking. He is, looking after himself the best he can with what he has. And I think that once we manage to kind of get back on top of his flat, he'll be able to look after himself all the more better. So I'm using for this particular kind of cleaning job pink stuff. You don't get to see me emptying out this cupboard because I hadn't realized that the storage had got full on my phone, which is what I use to record my videos, and had stopped recording. So this cupboard housed all of my dad's cleaning products, had a lot of car cleaning stuff. He does clean his own car. He's still doing that now. So this, where we have some cleaning stuff, also cleaning products out on the work surfaces, I want to get rid of stuff that has gone out of date, has been in there a long time, is not using, and put everything cleaning wise back into this cupboard. We had quite a few rust stains, so I'm using pink stuff, which is a cream cleaner, which I really like. Basically, if there's any stain that I can't get rid of, I use pink stuff, and that lifted that out really nicely. We couldn't get all of the rust stains out. Some of those seem pretty permanent, but it looks way better. So I'm getting the car cleaning stuff basically in a couple of buckets, which is going into that far corner of the cupboard, and then a couple of the bigger containers of screen wash for the car and ionized water for ironing. Those are kind of tucked around the corner. Then we have more of our day-to-day stuff at the front here. And whilst I left my dad a little scrub daddy sponge here, which I think are I don't know what it is about them. They're really cute and they're really happy. I did have to go back into the cupboard to use that later on, as I clearly didn't bring enough. So sorry about that, Dad. But it did survive the task, so it's still there. Still there. It's just not brand new. Now we have this little space. I think spaces like this in kitchens are really annoying. So originally it's been designed, it has a couple of kind of hooks-ish type things, like for tea towels and hand towel. And then what else would you put in there really though? I think in a small kitchen, all spaces should be capable of being fully utilized with a door on them. We shouldn't have these open spaces like this, but we have some things that we can put there. We have the step. There is kind of a little pulley thing for larger items. If my dad has something big he needs to carry, I put that there as well. And I'm giving the wall a bit of a wipe down, but at a future date, I would love to go over it with a couple of magic sponges, get off some of the marks. But for now, I'm just going to get all the cobwebs down. The bin, the bin is something that we are 100% going to be tackling today. That is looking pretty nasty. What I'm doing now here is just cleaning this little area of floor in the front here so that I can put a few things back. So the floor is a bigger job that I will need to do, but for now, we just want to do little bits so I can get some things back there. So you recall my dad had 8 crates sitting in that particular area of the kitchen. They weren't especially kitchen stuff. And in fact, I had actually emptied some of them out 18 months ago, where there were some that had more food stuff in. I had emptied those out. So there may have been 10 originally, I think, but we were down to 8 by this point. And during our decluttering, we managed to get those down to 2, which I think is awesome. My dad also has a drawer system which has tools and things for his hobbies, and I did encourage him to go back through the drawer system. And if we could get that down to no crates and just the drawer system, that would be amazing. But having 2 crates rather than 8 is awesome. and I want to get the bin basically and the crates into this particular area of floor. So for now, I'm cleaning just this little strip of the floor here. The last job is going to be to do the rest of the floor. So it's time to tackle that bin. Oh my goodness. And my dad said, don't clean the bin. I think he was pretty horrified by the bin. He said, don't clean the bin. I will just buy a new one. And it did have a crack in it. And I think, to be fair, he probably does need a new bin. But I don't think he's going to be rushing out tomorrow to buy a new bin, and I don't want him to have to rush out tomorrow to buy a new bin. So for now, I just wanted to clean that bin, get it looking much brighter. And if he wants to, he can keep the bin for a little while. He can replace it at a later date. Buying things that you don't absolutely have to buy in January is always a good thing post-Christmas. So I'm just giving that a really good clean, and it looks so much better. I just cleaned the lid. The rest of it looked fine. It has got a bin bag in it, so and it's always got a bin bag in it to protect it. So and also time was an issue. By this point, I was quite conscious that time was running out. I actually had some birthday drinks for a friend that evening. I needed to get back for, and I was an hour late for them, as it was, but I didn't want to miss them entirely. And I was also conscious that my dad would need to get back into his kitchen in order to cook his dinner, especially with him having diabetes. I don't want to keep him from his routine for any time, really. I want to make sure that he's keeping his blood sugar level, and he was, of course, monitoring that during the day. But having cleaned that bin, of course, we then needed to firstly got rid of those rubber gloves, got some new ones, and cleaned the sink. So we've cleaned the rubbish bin, the yuckiness off. Then we need to clean the yuckies off the sink. And now I'm just giving the tiles there a good wipe down, and also wiping the walls as much as possible. There are a lot of cobwebs, which you can't really see from these angles, but a lot of cobwebs, and I wanted to kind of clear those away as best we could, get rid of the majority of those cobwebs, get those tiles cleaned up. But one thing I did find was the paint on the tiles, the blue paint that I painted nearly, I don't know, 20 plus years ago now, is starting to peel away. Where it's so old, I mean, it's done pretty well. So I had to be careful when it came to the blue tiles. I didn't, put too much effort into them. And now I'm using the pink stuff again because we have quite a few stains on these work surfaces. And they came out really well with a bit of a scrub with the pink stuff. So I was really happy. In fact, my dad was pretty amazed, kept asking me, what is this stuff? So there was a little bit of one left over from 18 months ago, which I used up. I'd bought one as well. So after I finished cleaning, I left my pink stuff in my dad's cupboard. So now he knows what it is and how we use it. He can use it again another day. So that is really awesome. And we managed to get that area looking like so much brighter, but also cleared this space. So previously in this space, we had a lot of cleaning products and also food items. All of the cleaning products are now under the sink, and all of the food items that we are keeping that haven't been decluttered because they're out of date, they are in the cupboards. So my dad will be able to use this space hopefully for other items. I put kitchen roll there in the end because I think that's always handy to have out. But it's just nice, visually, like to keep some space clear. We don't need to fill all of the spaces with things. And ideally, we'll hopefully keep those clear permanently, so that my dad has a bit of room to breathe. That's the aim. And there is definitely stuff that we can do in terms of utilising the space a bit better. We've got some like open shelving in the kitchen here, and I absolutely hate open shelving in kitchen. Like, I don't want to be displaying stuff in my kitchen. I want cupboards with cupboard doors on them. And if there is not a cupboard there, and it's an area that doesn't need a cupboard door, it shouldn't be there, in my opinion. If I was to redesign this kitchen, I would 100% not have that corner unit there with things on display. I want my tea and coffee canisters away. I want them all in a cupboard. When I was growing up, like everyone had tea, coffee, and sugar canisters out in their kitchen. And when I got my first flat, when I'd moved out of home, I got myself tea, coffee, and sugar canisters. I remember that they were red. Like all of the accessories in my first kitchen were red. And, I had a tiny kitchen, probably similar size to this one. And I I didn't have the space on my work surfaces to have canisters. Like, these are not decorative items, they are functional items. And there should be absolutely no reason why we need all these tea caddies out on the work surfaces, guys, please. So I now have all of my tea and coffee away in a cupboard. And it's totally up to my dad to have these out. But I must say, he has his tea and coffee canisters there. He only has tea. He doesn't drink coffee, and the coffee one is completely empty. So perhaps I should have gently suggested that one go. We'll save that for another day. So pulled the microwave out. It really wasn't too bad, but there were a couple of items that had slipped down behind it that we could clear away and just give the tiles there a really good clear. And where we have grease, it's gone a bit hard and is a bit harder to shift. I use that plastic scraper that we used for the lime scale in the sink. That was also really good on the tiles and also on the work surface where we had any areas that were hard to clear. So we've got another area here that you can see where we had some brown staining and used the pink stuff there, and that came up so well. It looks so much better. Like, I knew that we could make a big difference in this kitchen in a day, but even I felt like as it was all coming together, like it was looking so much better. The plug socket itself was really grimy, and I started to clean it before my dad told me off and was like, "No, I'm going to use some proper stuff on that. Like, we don't use water on areas that plugs can go into," which is absolutely fair. So I left that be, did not touch that. And it kind of annoyed me that I had to put it back a bit grimy, but I will trust my dad to do that at a later date. Moving on to the hob, and we're very nearly getting there now. I was saying to my dad, like, this is the home straight. We're nearly there. There was quite a lot of stuff kind of stuck on the hob, and I did actually use a scrub daddy with pink stuff on this hob, which wouldn't be necessarily my tools of choice because I think it could be a bit scratchy on the hob, but the hob was already a bit scratched, and my dad said he hated the hob. He really wanted to get a new one. So he basically didn't care what it ended up looking like. So we could be a bit firmer perhaps with it. I think ordinarily the ideal would be to put some like oven cleaner, hob cleaner on there and then like cover it with cling film and just leave it to soak for a few hours. Which is something I kind of wish I'd thought about at the beginning of the clean, but I didn't. So we do the best that we can with the time that we have. And much like the sink, I could have spent longer on the hob and I think I could have got all of the grime off the hob. But I had to leave a little bit, just a little bit, because we were running out of time. And when it came to the tiles behind the hob, they had the most grease on them and the sides of the units here, and I had to get the scraper out to help here. But also in cleaning this backsplash area, quite a bit of the paint was coming off these tiles, which I have to say it was stressing me out and it was stressing my dad out as well. But I think we've got to the point of no return here and we just absolutely have to get the paint off of these tiles. So as I say, for now, we have to concentrate on decluttering and cleaning. And I think when we get to the point where we have minimized the stuff in the flat as far as we feel like we possibly can, then we can start with some renovations. But for now, we can't get distracted by renovations. We have to just get on top of the day to day. So now we're on to the floor, which is awesome. At this point, also, I should say, my arms were a bit sore, my shoulders were a bit sore. My 2-year-old has not been sleeping recently, and the night before, she had been in bed with me from 2 a.m. sleeping on my shoulder. And I had a pretty stiff right shoulder as it was. And yeah, I got to the point where I think my arms lacked the energy that my brain wanted them to have when it came to scrubbing of hobs and tiles, etc. So we're onto the floor. I'm using a scrub daddy on the floor and just some like hot soapy floor cleaner. I'm cleaning the baseboards as well under the cupboards and the floor itself. And I have to say, everything came up like with that scrub daddy and the hot soapy water, it came up really well. And in an ideal world, I'd have done a couple of cleans of the floor. So I've done like one rough clean, just getting the worst up. And then with fresh water, I'd have gone back over it. but I really had run out of time by this point. We have also amassed an awful lot of stuff that needs to leave the flat. We piled everything that was to go into my dad's bedroom onto the floor. And, there's absolutely no way anyone was walking in the bedroom. It was completely full. And we had to get rid of that stuff. So we had to take the rubbish to get rid of it. And there was a bunch of stuff that I'd volunteered to take home to gift on locally to other people. So I was conscious that we needed to do that before I left. My dad needs to get dinner. I need to get home, get showered, and get dressed to go and see my friends. So time to just dry up this floor, empty out our buckets and clean them and start gathering stuff together. But the floor is looking so much better. Look at that, just 2 crates there and Christmas presents that I got from my dad. Just a reminder, this is what we started with, this unit here that we couldn't get back under the counter because that coffee table was there. We've got 8 crates here overflowing with stuff. There are things everywhere, stains on the countertops, a grubby hob. We've got tools and everything out. And then here is the end. Like, oh my gosh, I was so pleased with how this turned out. I can't tell you. My dad was absolutely over the moon. I have to say, there was one point when I was cleaning, my dad said, "I'm so lucky to have you." And for a man who struggles to show his emotions, I think a lot of men of that age do. I was really touched by that comment. And it was so lovely of him to say that as well, because he doesn't need to say it. I would always come and help him, and I would always have done this. So the sink is a massive transformation when it comes to just a little bit of lime scale left there, and I'm confident next time that I tackle that, I will be able to get rid of that. We've got work surface. We've got just 2 crates for hobby stuff. Look at that bin lid. It looks so much better. The floor looks so much better. Even my shoes are happy to be there. The cobwebs have gone. The cupboard fronts are clean. The tiles are gleaming. And this is all the stuff. Oh my goodness. I wish I counted the rubbish bags, but there were bags upon bags. These crates, the crate at the top there was going, these 2 other crates, the coffee table under them. These crates that we emptied out, they went. We've got another kind of trolley system here, all these bin bags, and the couple of handles there as well. All of this stuff was to go. I am so pleased and actually surprised by how much we were able to get rid of. And that's thanks to my dad having a superb attitude when it came to parting with things here. We managed to get rid of an awful lot of stuff, and we managed to get the kitchen looking really awesome. So I will be back there next week to help him get his loo gleaming, and I will see you in the next one. Thanks for watching. Bye.